I was not admitted as a panelist, and then my mute was going back and forth. I'm
Yeah.
sorry. National Grid respectfully requests your permission to install approximately 480 feet of 12-inch coated steel main across the Center Street Bridge in Newton over the I-90. It's also known as Washington Street over the Mass Pike. National Grid has permits from MassDOT, MWRA, permits for the bridge, and National Grid's requesting the location for the proposed new main to tie in at the regulator station at 32 Richardson Street in Newton with a 20 by 10 opening, and then to tie in to the existing 12-inch bare steel approximately at 371 Washington Street in Newton.
Is this a repair, replacement, renovation issue, or can you tell us a little bit about why you're doing this?
Because National Grid deemed the main needs to be replaced, feed in the regulator station, and it's coordinated with the Mass Pike because it's under the bridge.
Okay. So your questions, Councilor Leary.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So I had a few constituents who are concerned about this. One thing is that this grant of location was not in your GSEP plans. It's not an emergency situation, and why hasn't it appeared in a plan submitted to the DPU?
I probably because it takes so long to get permits from MassDOT and the highway, as well as the MBTA and the other entities. So they probably just didn't put it in until they knew that they could secure the permits.
Yeah, I don't think that's a very good answer.
Oh, I'm sorry.
The other question was why abandon the 1964 12-inch bare steel main on one side of the bridge to construct a new main on the other? Why not line it, since they've already done this in Newton Corner Circle on a 12-inch bare steel that was discovered in the records request from 2021, or was it 2022? So why isn't that an option?
Well, I believe where it's feeding a regulator station, they have to have the exact poundage and pressure going into it. So they need a 12-inch column to put in there.
But it is 12 inches already, isn't it? It's a 12-inch
yes.
pipe.
Right.
We also lining would be less disruptive probably than putting in a new pipe on both sides of the bridge. But,
well, I think then it would reduce the size of the pipe if you lined it.
okay, well, I'm gonna not vote for this grant of location, not just for these reasons, but also until the city of Newton has a citywide plan for strategic goals for getting off methane gas. I will not be voting for any methane gas grants of location until that happens. That's how I feel about it. We're already voting to, as part of the 10 communities, to not allow gas hookups in the new construction and major renovations. And I just think this is contrary to our plans, and I haven't found the answer satisfactory this evening. So I will be voting no.
Okay, before we open the public hearing, does anybody else have a question? No. So, Councilor Kelly?
Thank you. I will lower my hand. I would like to just go on the record, and also Shauna Sullivan has her hand up too. I want to go on the record as agreeing fully with everything that Councilor Leary just said. It's not just on this one, but on others. If we're talking about gas lines, until there's a better plan, until we can show how we're conforming to getting off fossil fuels, I will be voting no on this one also, as well as other ones, as we sort of stated that last night too. So I just wanted to state that for the record. Thanks.
I want to remind my colleagues that earlier in the week, I sent everybody, or maybe it was last week, sent an email saying that someone, Amy Smith, would be here from National Grid on June 20th to talk about gas leaks, and she would like to have our questions in advance. So I had asked in that email to have questions into Cassidy by the 13th, which is next Monday, I
Okay,
believe. or
thank you for the
Tuesday.
reminder.
Yeah, or Tuesday, maybe it's Wednesday. Yeah, just in time for the Friday packet to let it go out. Ms. Sullivan,
Could we let John Daglian in? He's under St. Stephen's Church, Watertown, as a panelist.
okay.
Thank you.
All right, so anybody else before I open the public hearing? I think not, so I'm gonna open the public hearing. And if you are in the attendees and you would like to speak on this item, you can raise your hand. I can't see your face, so you'll have to raise your hand under, let's see, I can't see how it's arranged. Where is raise your hand?
It's
It's gonna be, it's at the bottom of the screen.
It's somewhere in the bottom of the screen. Yeah, it says raise hand. So if you raise your hand, I will call on you and you can speak. So I see Nathan Phillips. Can you promote him or do you, oh yeah, okay,
Yeah, so I'm promoting him, it just takes like, about 5 to 6 seconds.
okay. Hello, Nathan. Good to see
Hi.
you.
Yeah, good to see you. Can you hear me?
Yep,
Yes, I would like to just state my concern with this grant of location in that I reviewed the materials and it did not seem responsive to the details that were asked for on the application, like start date and end date, reason why the project is being done. And I didn't, with due respect, I did not hear those answers given just in the last 5 minutes either that are satisfactory. So on procedural grounds alone, I would really request that this either be held or until those answers and that due diligence be done. It just seems like they weren't responsive to the questions that were just asked. I would also say that the lining, if the concern is that the lining decreases the diameter of the pipe, that is not true in the sense that the lining is a very narrow polymer fiber membrane that's about 3/16 of an inch thick. So the reduction in diameter is not a germane issue. Anyway, thank you so much for taking my comment.
thank you, Mr. Phillips. Is there anybody else in the attendees that would like to speak? I see Ms. Counselor Gentile is in the attendees. Maybe you should promote him as well. So I don't see anyone else raising their hand. Oh, Mr. Daglian.
Thank you. So we met with National Grid last year and the project entailed the relining of the pipe. So they had to do some exploratory test pits and they also tried to camera the line. Because of the orientation of the bridge and there's so many bends, they can't reline the pipe. That's why they went to Plan B to put in a new pipe to replace the old one. That's the reason they can't reline it.
Thank you. That's helpful.
Is too many turns in the pipe?
Yeah, because the pipe is suspended from the bridge and the bridge in that point curves, as you know, on Washington Street. There's a lot of curvature and there's so many bends, the relining would not be feasible in that orientation.
It's hard to believe.
Is there anybody else that wants to speak? Ms. Sullivan, did you have your hand up as well? No. Okay, I don't see anyone else going once, going twice. Anybody else wants to speak? No? I think we can close the public hearing.
Oh, okay, I just see one hand.
Yeah, that's right. Council Laredo.
So, I too am concerned about the answers or frankly lack thereof. What I'm gonna suggest is we hold the item. I'm loath to, I understand the principles that my colleagues from Ward 1 and Ward 3 are espousing. I am concerned about the practical effect we would have on service to existing customers who are just not gonna rip out their gas systems tomorrow. But the answers we got weren't good answers, so I'm gonna suggest we hold this, because we have the person coming in 2 weeks. Ms. Mulroney, I would urge you to prepare the representative who's gonna be appearing before us to be prepared to answer the specific questions Counselor Leary raised, and also to provide a little bit more information, maybe a lot more information than was given to Mr. Daglian, which is, well, we just can't do this. I want to hear why.
I think we should, if you don't, sorry to interrupt, but we can put the questions in writing.
I think that would
If you
be,
want to do that,
Yes.
but I do want to alert Ms. Mulroney, because she presumably is going to be talking to this person. But I'm going to move to hold the item.
okay, and is there any discussion on the move to hold? And we've been joined by Counselor Kalis, I see. Is there any discussion on move to hold? No, seeing none, let's vote. All those in favor of hold, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Anybody opposed? Any abstentions?
Madam Chair, could we just have the clerk maybe transcribe what we just talked about and put in the form of a question for us,
Sure,
if you don't mind?
that would be helpful, and then we can send it.
Now you'll have it to transcribe.
We can send it to you, Mary, and we'll also send it to Amy Smith. Okay, that takes care of that one. The next item is item 251-24. Eversource Energy petition for grant of location to relocate a pole 227-/12 approximately 5 feet north of its current location on Jackson Road. The City of Newton Engineering Department noted that this is an after the fact filing, whatever that means.
Easy.
They already put it in.
Oh, it's already been
But I
done?
thought that they had already, I asked for a grant of location on for this. Was it, is there more than one pole? Because I know we voted on it. So this is on Jackson Road, it's related to the school project.
I didn't have to look on that, I don't.
Oh, okay.
Is there somebody here from Eversource?
Yeah, right here. I think this might be the person, but I don't know.
Oh, Joanne, isn't that the person?
Joanne?
That's one.
Yeah, she's the person.
Good
Joanne,
evening.
Are you here?
I'm
from-
here.
Good.
Yeah. So, what was said was correct. What happened, the last time I met with you, we were getting a grant location to move the pole 11, and we did do that. But then, I guess we found out through the city that was the wrong pole. You actually needed pole 12 moved.
Oh,
So this grant location is to get permission to move pole 12, even though it has already been done at the request of, I believe, Tom Rooney, and another young lady.
Okay, all right. We have to have a public hearing.
It's a pole, POLE, right?
Yeah. Yeah, well, we can relocate a pole and ask people questions at the same time.
That might not help.
Is there anybody here that wants to speak on this item? Anybody these are the two attendees? Okay. I don't see anyone, so I think we can close the public hearing.
It's your ward. Council.
Yes, I move approval for this item.
So Councilor Leary has moved approval. Any comments, any questions, discussion? No, okay. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Abstentions? All right, that takes care of that one. Thank you, Joanne.
Thank you. Have a good evening.
And I failed to note that we've also been joined, as well as with Ms. Sullivan, we have Commissioner McGonigal is here from DPW. So this item is referred to both Public Facilities and Finance to transfer, Her Honor the Mayor requesting an authorization to transfer the sum of $125,000 and from the account designated the Newton Free Library full-time salaries account to move it for the library building maintenance electricity. Do I have that right?
I believe you do.
Did you want to speak on it?
Just very quickly.
We've also been joined by our
Yeah.
COO.
Joanne it the old way, going between the rooms.
It's good to see you in person.
Yeah, it's nice to have you.
Here, a little challenging, but, so as you all know, we are working on redoing the HVAC system for the libraries. You've approved the funding for that, it's in design, that will happen over the course of this coming winter, so before next summer, so that we have better air conditioning next summer. So in the meantime, we are, the older 33-year-old system now is laboring and consuming more electricity than it normally should be. And so what we need to do through this is to transfer some money to make sure we can cover the electric bills that we know are gonna stay higher for another 6 months, or, you know, until the cooling season is over. So this is really to make sure we have enough money to fund that account properly.
So it's not about anything to do with the design or construction,
No.
it's about the utility bill.
Yes, this is to pay the utility bill.
Okay.
Yeah. To the degree we can cool it this summer, we want to keep it as cool as possible.
Okay, President Loredo.
So, how much of the, electric bills are being paid from the solar panels at the library?
Oh, Bill Ferguson is not here. I think it's like 40%. It's a sizable percentage is offset.
I thought that was supposed to be greater.
I think it's fully lived up to its expectations. I will check for you though.
Well, if we're gonna get an improved heating and cooling system, presumably then solar will be able to provide a greater percentage.
I
right?
would think so, theoretically. I will check on that as well. Good question.
I'm
Yeah.
gonna abstain on the item until.
Okay, well, we're just trying to pay the bills, so,
I'm not, I guess I'm gonna abstain here. I'm fine with approving it, but I'd like answers to that,
sure.
if we could. Before, I'd like to know specifically what was promised in terms of how much solar was gonna contribute to the
I
electric
think
burden.
that is all working just fine. I think we're very happy with the amount of solar
Well,
and the offset, so.
there was a representation made that solar would cover a certain amount of the cost, okay? Of electric,
No, it was of the amount of energy use.
fair enough.
Yeah, not costs, costs go up.
If I understand the system's not working well, and I understand it's gonna be replaced, presumably if the system is working more efficiently, solar will have a much greater percentage of the total cost.
I will ask the experts that
But
question. Yeah,
that's the information I'd like to know.
we'll do it this week, yeah.
Thanks.
Councilor Leary.
Mr. Yo, is this based, the money you're asking for based on the cost from last year?
Yes, yeah, they looked at last summer's electrical use and I think, you know, Perry working with Bill Ferguson looked at the data and figured out how much we were gonna need extra.
And it's
So again, this is like a one-time thing because
Right.
we expect
this will
a
happen.
much more efficient system going into FY, 2026.
Right.
Yeah.
So, the other question I have is, will this ensure a comfortable environment for staff and for visitors to the library?
We're gonna crank it up to the highest degree we can.
And
to
that's why
get
it's
through
gonna
this.
be expensive, right? Because
Yes.
you're really pushing the limits on this
That's right.
system.
Yeah, and there's also some, you know, a little greater amount of TLC that's needed in terms of keeping an eye on things. So we're gonna do everything we can.
Do you
to keep
expect
full.
that there'll be money left over? Are you asking, or that you might have to come back and ask for more?
we don't believe so.
Okay,
Yeah, but I
well,
will let you know if it comes up, but at this point, I think we projected based on last summer, what we might need, to extra for this year. Again, we did want to build this into our budget because we don't expect next year in 26 to need this amount of money for electricity.
okay, maybe we can get those answers before the finance committee.
That'd be fine. Can I just ask a follow-up?
Can we call on Councilor Kalis first?
Of course.
Councilor Kalis?
Thank you. And thanks, Mr. Yo, for all your information. One question I have is, did we allocate our budget for another person within the library and then just not hire? Is that how we have that money freed up, or I'm just wondering how that money was budgeted?
Vacancies, we had a number of vacancies, many of which have now been filled, but there were a number of vacancies that created, those savings.
Earlier in the year?
We had a director of communications, Ellen Myers, retired. That took, these positions take a number of months to backfill to make sure you get the right person. So that's how that's created.
Okay.
President Correa.
Two follow-ups. Now, one, I would have thought that we would have known what our electric costs were last summer, so it would have been baked into the 2025 budget.
No, we specifically didn't want to bake it into the budget because this is temporary. So
It's gonna cover July, August, and September, right?
yes, but again, this is just for 1 year. So you try not to, when you do budgeting, you try not to bake in temporary phenomena. If you can get one-time funding to get to one-time costs, that is what we always try to do. So
Respectfully, that's a philosophical issue, but I would think it'd be more accurate to budget what your costs are, and you can always decrease the budget the following year.
that might be your philosophy, but that's not ours.
And second, you said there was a vacancy, for example, and presumably we knew about the retirement for some time.
Mhm.
So if we knew about the retirement for some time, I'm concerned that it still took that long to fill the position.
Well, we're very, very speedy at filling, all the paperwork. It's just finding the right candidate takes a long time, so. That position, I think it took a long time. We did find somebody. You go through interviews and, not everyone picks, selects, people drop out, so. We have a pretty well-oiled hiring process right now, but it's not always snap between the old person leaving and the new person.
Sure, I guess I don't want to belabor it, but it would be useful for another time and maybe another committee to understand how long that process took between when the retirement was announced and the position was filled, and if there's things we can do internally to speed it up or do things differently, that's all.
So
Yeah, and-
we can take that up,
Another time.
to programs and
Programs and
services.
services, I'm sure HR would be happy to talk about the whole process.
Yes. Okay. All right, so do we have a motion for this one?
I'll make a motion to approve.
All right, any other discussion? Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstentions? So we have one abstention and the rest of us are yes. Okay, the next item is 214-24, Department of Public Works requesting to provide an update on the Transportation Network Improvement Plan. And who is here to speak to this one?
Thank you, Madam Chair. We have Conrad Ledger from Environmental Partners. Conrad, they're our consultant for our roads program. Conrad's been with us since the inception of this, so is well versed. Many of you have seen his presentation. Some of you, this will be the first time. So we'll go through Conrad's presentation and we'll be.
All right, thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you, Madam Chair, for allowing me to present to you all tonight. So I'm just going to share my screen here real quick and just make sure that this is working correctly. Everyone see the screen okay?
Yes.
All right, great. Thank you. So first off, I just want to apologize for not being able to be there in person with you tonight. This is one of my, personally, this is a very, one of the presentations that I look forward to on a yearly basis. As Commissioner McGonigal spoke about, I've been working with the city now since 2018 on this program. And it's great to kind of give you an overview of what we've accomplished so far and what we're continuing to do moving forward. So I know there are some new counselors that are joining us today, so I want to make sure I share a bit of the program's history. So we really started this journey back in 2017 with a citywide road assessment. And that evaluation revealed that there was a need for a significant investment to enhance the roadway network first and foremost, and then the evolution of the program has gotten into a full transportation network-wide improvement program. So tonight's presentation is I'm going to give you an overview of where the history of the program, where we're at right now, and then what we hope to accomplish in 2024. So first, I want to start out with the program goals, and I'm actually going to read this off the screen because I think it's important for everybody to get context on what our goals are here. So first off, our goal is to strategically improve the City of Newton's roadway and sidewalk network, aiming to deliver a high level of service. The city is committed to ensuring a superior user experience for all modes of transportation, including pedestrians, cyclists, and vehicles. The city's objective is to accommodate all users, regardless of age, ability, income, or preferred mode of transportation. And the city's infrastructure asset management program assists in guiding data-driven decisions to perform timely maintenance and rehabilitation, which best benefits the City of Newton. So overall, in terms of what we're trying to do here is we're trying to use data to take a lot of the objectivity out of some of the decision-making that we're doing, and allow that data to guide us in the right direction to utilize the city's funding in the most advantageous way. So in terms of, I'm going to first give you an update as to where we're at right now with the road network, and then we'll talk about sidewalks a little bit too. So first and foremost, the current PCI for the overall road network is a 72.17. The program began at an overall PCI of a 62. 274 centerline miles of roadway, and approximately 50% of those needs are still in need of rehabilitation. One thing that I do want to point out here is I know that at the beginning of this program, the mayor had set out some goals in terms of what the PCI rating would be for roadway classifications. And you can see here at the bottom, we've broken that down into arterials, collectors, and local roadways. And you can see, I believe the goal back at the inception of this program was an 80 for the arterials and collectors. And then the local roadways, I believe, was a 70. So we're really heading towards those goals there. In terms of the arterials, we're at a 78.92 right now. Collector is a 78.58. And then the local roadways, which consists of the majority of the roadways in terms of classification in the city, are at a 68.84. So, I was just texting with Commissioner McGonigal and Deputy Commissioner Sullivan the other day when I was in the city, and there is a noticeable difference from the beginning of this program to what you drive on a daily basis now in the city. And I think these numbers really, truly reflect that, where the roadways that are driven the most by the community, the arterials and the collector roadways have generally come up to a much better state of repair. And the local roadways, while we're trying to peck away at them and get to as many as possible, those are still needing some improvement in some areas. But again, we've made great strides in both areas. Some of this data is the overall data itself is from the inspections that were performed in 2022, plus our road history that we've updated recently. So while there's a little bit of built-in deterioration, we're looking forward to seeing what the road inspections will result in this year. And those inspections are going to start here in the next couple of months. In terms of the overall backlog and what that looks like in terms of miles of roadway and that backlog report in terms of the overall maintenance that's required, you can see here that the overall estimated cost is $125 million to do all the work if you were to do it today. Obviously, there's been a significant investment, and that number has come down over time, but also inflation and cost to do some of these repairs has gone up. But you can see here, one of the things that I do want to point out is those roadways that are in the defer maintenance category, the routine maintenance category, and the preventative maintenance categories. So, you can see there that consists of well over 100 miles of roadway at this point. And as this program continues to evolve, we're going to be doing more maintenance on those roadways that we made the investment in at the beginning of the program to make sure that that investment lasts as long as possible. So some of those treatments that happen in those routine and preventative maintenance categories, the routine maintenance is crack seal, which is the squiggly lines on the roadway. And that prevents water from intruding into the subbase of the roadway, which pops potholes and causes significant increase in deterioration. And then preventative maintenance, which is typically a curb-to-curb surface treatment that helps preserve the roadway surface and not crack as much, and also provide a great riding surface for the users of that roadway. One of the evolutions of the program too was, you may recall, for those of you who were on this call a couple of years ago, that we also added a sidewalk inventory to the overall data that we had. So some of the existing conditions here are similar to what we've seen in the past. About 420 miles of sidewalk infrastructure were evaluated, and this was all done by city staff. So with some, minor training at the beginning of this. So great data for us to be able to make decisions off of. About 41% of those roadways were in good condition. Sidewalks were in good condition. 48% were in fair condition, and then 11% were in very poor condition. In addition to the sidewalk inventory, we did an evaluation of all the city's curb ramps, so about 5,200 of them, and you can see the results of that program there as well. So a little bit more history in terms of the work history and the construction that's been done about as part of this program. So we've recently updated this to show all the way through 2023 construction season. And, in terms of what was performed last year, there were about 13.83 miles of roadway that were paved last year, and all different types of treatments that we did there. And the overall program has hit about 71.54 miles of roadway. And I do want to indicate here that this is just surface treatments and minor rehabilitation and major rehabilitation roadways. We are not including in here the roadways that received routine maintenance, such as crack sealing and fog sealing. They don't have as big of an impact, but it's more of the maintenance that you do along the way to preserve the life of these roadways. In terms of sidewalk construction history, we're also making sure that we track that as well. So you can see the results of that here as well. And the mapping on the right-hand side is a nice graphical feature. So you can kind of see where sidewalks have been rehabilitated along with the roadway work. In terms of pedestrian infrastructure, I want to talk a little bit about some of the prioritization and the analysis that we've done with this too. And this is continuing to evolve as the program does overall, and we're doing this and we kind of reassess and reprioritize the roadways as we get new data in as well. So some of the things that we're looking at here, and this was all included in the mayor CIP, but the real focus here is around the school areas and making sure that the students in the community have safe walking paths to be able to get to and from the schools. And I'll kind of show a little bit more of that moving forward. But along with that, we're taking into account, roadway classification to understand where the likely connection points are going to be. Safe routes to school. So we use the previously established plow routes for some of that in terms of the prioritization. And then we have the condition assessment and looking at ADA and AAB compliance, and then high pedestrian locations and walking destinations. So in terms of what is going to be the focus this year and next, we're still looking at the school locations that were identified in the CIP. So first and foremost is the focus of the Underwood School, and then the Williams School and the Ward School as well. Williams and Ward have received some work in the past, but we're going to be doing some additional work in those areas. And then the Underwood School, we're looking at prioritizing that as well and looking at the needs there. What is shown on screen is a result of the pedestrian network inventory and assessment. So you can see the green lines on each of these maps indicate sidewalks that are in good condition. And then the yellows are the fair and the reds are the poor. And then what that results in is giving us a better understanding of what routes actually need to be constructed and improved. So this is an example of what those maps look like now. So with this is allowing us to do preliminary engineering estimates to understand what the value of this work is going to be. And we're continuing to find funding sources and being able to allocate not just funding sources towards the roads program, but also to the sidewalk program as well. In terms of the roadway network, I'll give you an update now on what work is scheduled for this year. So in terms of prioritizing the road network, and I know I've kind of used this slide a number of times in the past, but I think it's important for people to understand that there's a process here for selecting the roadways that actually get done. So the areas in the light purple are usually the starting point when we're evaluating which roadways are going to be selected. So first off, we need to figure out what the budget is going to be for the roadway network upgrades that year. And then also looking at the existing conditions based on the information that we have from available data. Secondly, we need to go and we need to look at what the underground infrastructure is as well, because the last thing we want to do is repair a roadway and have one of the utilities need to come in and do some emergency repairs and immediately deteriorate that roadway. So we evaluate for and cross-check between the CIPs for water, sewer, and utility upgrades as well. And we've been working with the underground infrastructure utilities as well that are not part of the city. And then we look at the cost benefit value, and that's a industry standard in terms of looking at where you're going to get the most value for the dollars that you spend. It takes into account traffic volumes and also the cost to perform repairs. And it's a good gauge for us to help with the prioritization. And then lastly, we're taking a look as well for complete streets and ADA and bike network needs that are established as part of the program. And then lastly, community needs. So some of these may pop up and may look at the data a little bit differently, or may come up and not necessarily agree with the data. But we want to make sure that we take that into account and make sure that we're not missing anything from a data standpoint that the community may need to actually input into the decisions. So in terms of the planned construction for 2024, I'm not going to read off this entire list, but I'll read off a couple of the major routes here in terms of what is planned for major paving for 2024. But some of the high level, projects that we're going to be tackling this year, Avondale Avenue, Albemarle Road, and then some of the more local roads are in here as well. I know Ward has been a roadway that's been on our list for a long, long time, and it needed some significant utility work to be completed before we could get in there, but that is also on the list this year. And then lastly, a really successful program that in terms of being able to really work at those roadways that were in poor condition is the maintenance overlay program that we put in place about 3 years ago. And most of this has been funded using ARPA funds, but it has really enabled us to look at the worst roadways in terms of overall PCI for streets in the community and really tackle those from a roadway user standpoint. And I think this has been a really successful program for the city, and allowed us to get to some of those roadways that if you use the data to really give you the answers in terms of which roadways you're going to get the most advantageous dollars to be spent on, we wouldn't have gotten to these roadways as part of this 10-year program because they aren't as heavily traveled, but they're very important to the residents that live on those roadways. So we've been able to tackle a lot of this with the ARPA funding that's been allocated towards the roads program, and it's really been successful. So again, a very long list of the roadways that are being tackled in 2024. We've updated this list for roadways that have actually already been completed this year. But you can see that there's I believe it's 51 total roadways and about, I can see on the next slide of the number of miles of roadway that we're going to tackle this year. But again, roadway work being done all over the city. In addition to the individual roads that are being selected, we also wanted to point out some planned intersection construction that's going to be happening as part of this program as well. Spalding Lane and Hartman Road at Brookline Street, Franklin Road at Waverly Avenue, Arnold Road at Country Club Road, and then Langley Road and Sumner Street at Beacon Street. So again, these are all part of the Transportation Network Improvement Program. To summarize kind of the work that we're going to tackle in 2024 in terms of roadway work, it's a pretty significant amount of roadway work. So 18.01 miles overall. And you can kind of see the value there at the end, but it's stretching across a number of different types of treatments. We're going to continue to look at treatments that are also green and sustainable. And you can see there with the 1.79 miles of cold in place recycling. We tried that a couple years ago on a couple roadways, and it was really successful. And we're going to continue to use that where it's appropriate to be able to have a better impact on our environment in terms of the roadway work that we're doing, and making sure that we're keeping it front of mind as we're doing these selections. It's all about using the right repairs in the right situations to be able to make those products as successful as possible. But this is just one of the alternatives that we're using. Instead of doing major rehabilitation where we're ripping up a roadway and putting a new roadway down, we're looking for these alternative treatments that have worked well in the past. This work that is listed here does not, again, include the routine and the preventative maintenance work that we're going to be doing as well. We select those on a yearly basis because the conditions for those change quite frequently across the wintertime, and then we slot those in as appropriate. So in terms of next steps, this is not meant to be a stagnant program. It's meant to evolve over time. Some of the things that we're going to tackle in 2024 is we are going to perform a reevaluation of the road network. And again, that gives us great data to be able to prioritize and understand where we should be tackling first. We're also going to be recalibrating the priority of the roads. And, there's been some updates to traffic volumes, for instance, and also our unit costs to be able to repair the roads. So as part of that, we're going to rerun that cost benefit value analysis that we use to help prioritize the roadway repairs. And over the winter time, we're hoping to kind of get a new prioritized program to be able to display to you all probably in the springtime of next year, so that you can understand better, how we're utilizing that data and which roadways are going to be tackled here over the next couple of years. And then lastly, we need to finish the development of our long-range sidewalk prioritization. I know that's something that we talk about a lot in our weekly and biweekly meetings for this program. And I think, that is a #1 priority for us moving forward, is to make sure that we understand where we're going to tackle moving forward, what type of funding can be allocated towards it, and how that fits into the overall puzzle of the Transportation Improvement Program. So with that, I'll stop sharing my screen. I can pull it back up at any time, but we'll be happy to hear any questions you may have.
Okay, thank you. We do have some questions. I just want to say before we go on that my colleagues who are on Zoom may have been able to see and read those images that you gave us, but I think this is one PowerPoint that giving it to us in advance would have helped, because it was very hard for us in the room to read many of those slides. So if if maybe next time you come to us, I'm guessing that this slide presentation was done well in advance. It's a pity that it wasn't in our Friday packet so that we could read along with you, because it was just impossible to read many of those slides. But I think the presentation, it was very good, but it just couldn't, it was hard to keep up with you, that's all.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We duly noted. We apologize for that. You're right. We should have put this in sooner so you had that information with you. We will definitely get it in this Friday's packet, or we could actually send it out tomorrow to the council.
I can wait for the Friday packet, it's fine. Thank you. Okay, let me call on the folks Councilor Kalus, I think you're first.
Thank you. Just so you know, it wasn't very easy for us to read it either. I tried, and I think even with President Laredo's reading glasses, I wouldn't have been able to. So my questions are, if you can remind me, what is the maintenance of the roadways? What do you do in that?
Yeah, there's a number of different treatments that would be categorized under maintenance. There is routine maintenance and preventative maintenance. Routine maintenance is typically a non-structural treatment that usually is trying to offset some sort of deterioration that is happening there. So for instance, crack sealing is specifically for making sure that water intrusion does not happen through the cracks that are forming on the surface of the roadway. It is, in my opinion, it is the most cost-effective treatment that we can do to a roadway in terms of maintenance. It is not the most pleasant to look at, but at the same time, if we're looking at the overall value that you're getting for the dollars that are being spent, it's extremely valuable as in terms of a tool in the toolbox. One of the other treatments that we use in the routine maintenance category is something called fog sealing. And I liken that to sealing your driveway on steroids. And basically it is usually some sort of an emulsion that goes down, curb to curb treatment on the roadway. And what it does is it makes that top layer of pavement more flexible to prevent future cracking from happening.
So maintenance could be curb to curb.
Maintenance can absolutely be curb to curb. Yep.
Okay, I didn't understand that. That's good. And then the cold in place, I think when we did that in the past, that was you correct me if I'm wrong, is that the one that burnt the leaves of the trees?
Nope, that was hot in place recycling. So there's cold in place recycling and hot in place recycling. Cold in place is a treatment that goes, there is no heat to the treatment. So we have done some of that in the past. Shauna or Jim, could you?
Chestnut Street is.
Chestnut Street, sorry. It was recently done on Chestnut Street. I believe it was 2 years ago that was completed. If you weren't there and you didn't see it be done, you would just think that Chestnut was just a brand new roadway. But there's certain conditions that we have to look for to be able to perform that treatment. Some of it has to do with the roadway thickness that is there in terms of the overall pavement thickness. Because what it is doing is it's actually grinding up the roadway surface that's there and putting it back down in place and adding rejuvenators to it to make it more flexible and make it a better base to put new materials on top of. And then you seal that. Typically, we've been using a 1.5 inch asphalt overlay to be able to kind of finish that off, because you have to seal that treatment either with a preventative maintenance treatment or a full, 1.5 inch overlay.
Okay, so the hot in place we're not doing. I didn't see it listed.
We are not planning to do it as of right now, but that doesn't mean that we won't add that to the work that's being performed this year.
Okay, and then one more question. So 71 miles complete since 2017. Are we moving fast enough? I mean, it's about 10 miles a year. How is that for a road program? And did COVID slow us down? I noticed we're doing 18 this year. So, what's your assessment of the program?
Yeah, well, keep in mind too that 71 miles is really just for what we're calling minor rehabilitation. There is a little bit of preservation in there with the bond and wearing course that is one of the treatments. But overall, that doesn't include any of the routine maintenance that we're doing to kind of keep those roadways in good condition. So overall, I think it's a pretty aggressive program. Obviously, more funding results in more work to be able to get done. But at the end of the day, I think we've made great strides overall. And you can see that in the overall PCI score, where you've gone from that 62 to a 71, and specifically on the arterials and the collector roadways, where you're seeing significant improvement on the rideability of those roadways. Not to mention, with the program, you're also doing the sidewalk work to go along with it. So it's not just the road program. I think I'm speaking for Commissioner McGonigal and Deputy Commissioner Sullivan, but I think if there was more money, we'd love to do more, but we also know that there's financial constraints there as well.
All right, thank you.
Councilor Danberg, you're next.
Thank you very much. And I want to thank the presenters for this wonderful presentation. I think all of us, I know I do, look forward to hearing this every year. And it's very good to see what the improvements have been made during the year and how we're progressing on our roads and sidewalks. Can you tell me how many linear miles of sidewalk we are plowing in the wintertime? Is it 89 or is it different than that?
No, you're about right, Counselor. It may just be over 90, but not any more than that.
Okay, and is there any plan to increase that?
So right now, with our internal staff, we're pretty well maxed out. We have bid this out over the last 3 years and have not received one bid for this type of work. We even changed the bid proposals this year, allowing handwork, which we thought maybe would attract some smaller contractors, not requiring larger equipment. And we put it out to bid twice this year and still received no bids for the sidewalk work. So until we can bring outside contractors in, we're really maxed out at about that 90-mile mark.
Okay, all right. When we reach the 80-70, and we're close, we're at 78 and 68, I think now. How will you prioritize at that time? You have said that the major collectors are in pretty good shape, that the real difficulty is in the smaller roads, and I agree that that's probably the case. Can we then place more attention on the smaller roads?
So I would say to that point, I think right now we're striking a really good balance between looking at minor and major arterials and collectors versus local roadways. And there are still a number of arterials and collectors that fall into the minor and the major rehab category and are going to continue to deteriorate. So I think I'd have a better answer for you, Councilor Danberg, when we get the new data in. We are set on what we're planning to perform this year, but when we reprioritize moving forward, we readjust our unit costs based on the inflation that we've seen, and we also insert new traffic volumes into the data. I think I'd have a better answer for you then. But I will say, in terms of prioritization, where we're going to see a significant shift is we're going to be performing more maintenance than we've ever done in the past, because we want to make sure that we prolong the life of the roadways, of the investments that we made in 2018, 2019, and 2020, so those roadways stay in good condition and we can continue to peck away at the roadways that are not in good shape.
Good. Okay. Thank you. That's, I'm glad to hear that. And my last question is on the, by the way, thank you for making sure that we do, and I understand that this summer we're planning on doing the Langley Beacon Sumner intersection, and we're also doing the Union Street sewer work, or stormwater work rather. On the Union Street project, is there any reason why you would have to disturb the restaurant outdoor seating, or will the trenches be dug outside of the seating itself?
That it's probably a little premature for that, Counselor. The means and methods we always leave up to the contractor. We will work with them during the bid process just to have, so they have a good understanding of the constraints there, but we may be limited to where we can trench, and we have to go by the design that we bid out. So yeah, we'll have to be mindful of that, but there will probably be some impacts to certain businesses there. We'll be working with them closely once we put that out to bid.
Okay, and where you can trench will be determined by what's already under the street and where it is.
That's correct. Current utilities and then design as where the new pipe network will be.
Okay, good. Thank you very much.
Thank you. President Laredo, you're next.
So a couple of questions. First, you mentioned the sidewalks. Have you actually surveyed all the sidewalks in the city? Or is your number just the sidewalks that you surveyed? And if so, what's left?
So as far as we're aware of, those sidewalks, the entire network was looked at. And those were actually done internally by city staff.
So I just want to be clear, you've covered every sidewalk in the city on a public way, right?
Correct. According to the information that we have, we believe everything is covered. There's always small data gaps, but as far as we can see in the QA/QC we've done, on the data that was collected, we believe everything is touched.
So, for example, Commissioner, in Oak Hill Park, there's, the paths that go from street to street that are not adjacent to a street. Is that counted in your sidewalk count as well?
Yes, those are in there also, Counselor, and this is all mapped in GIS. So that's how we know that we have, as Conrad mentioned, there may be some small gaps, but everything that's in the public way is mapped in GIS now with a condition, and those are those lines that you see. We graded them good, fair, poor, needs replacement.
That's terrific. I just might suggest when you present next time, it sounded like you hadn't done all the mapping. And you might just want to preface it by saying you've done this extensive mapping, because that gives not only us, but members of the public assurance you've really done a global review. So my second question is for Mr. Yo. Refresh my memory, how much were we spending when under Mayor Warren, when we stepped up the roads project? Did we go up to 9 million at that time?
Well, the goal has been to spend 9.5 million a year, using a variety of sources of funds, as you know, because you often approve free cash or salary savings or other sources to fund that 9.5 million. So that's been our goal, and we've been on average certainly meeting that. During COVID, we lost tens of millions of dollars of revenue very quickly overnight. And so we were not able to do it for a year and a half, but we quickly made that up using ARPA funds, which was the whole purpose of ARPA. And we've gone now, we're a couple of years on. Shauna, you have the numbers. There's been some years where we've been spending 11, 12 million a year. So we've gone over the 9.5 million. To, certainly we've been surging on these smaller residential roads of the program for the last 2 years. So on average, we've been spending a little over 9.5 million.
But the budget, Mr. Ledger, you just put up there was 9.6, right?
That's what we have accounted for right this second, and they're also their estimates as well. So they this doesn't account, that didn't account for any of the routine or preventative maintenance and things like that. So the overall spend this year will likely be more.
I understand. Ms. Sullivan wants to respond.
Yes, Shauna, go ahead.
I track this on the regular. I'd be happy to send you my graph from FY20 to FY24 with our spending. Right now, we have about 9.5 under contract. We have additional funding that we anticipate getting under contract in the next few months.
How much?
About 1.5 million.
Another 1.5 million? And is that from free cash or one?
Well, later.
That's from ARPA.
Yeah.
If you'll notice, we do have another 2.8, I believe, up for discussion this evening that we haven't planned out yet.
Of the 9.5.
Well, the 1.5 million is above the
The
9.
additional.
That's great.
Yeah, and so what we're doing with this next pot, we'll get to that, but is making sure next year we have the 9.5 million. We're really emptying out the cash this year to make sure.
So I just want to be clear then, we're spending 9.5 million fiscal 2025. Is that the plan?
Yes, at 25, we're gonna probably even go beyond that. I don't know, Shauna.
I think that we're going to go beyond that with the 1.5 and ARPA funding that we have currently available.
But that's it from the ARPA funding, obviously.
That is it right now.
We're still looking at other projects, whether we're gonna be able to spend out everything. I know at the top of the mayor's list is to continue to deal with the small residential roads. So if we have savings on other projects, the Treasury Department, their new rules really allow us, even after December 24, to move money between allocated projects. So we'll have the flexibility to add a couple roads, for an example, if we save money on another project, so.
Well, that's interesting because we weren't told that in connection with the Washington Street pilot, which was presented like we have to vote it all done and done.
We do. We have to approve projects. We have to obligate all of the funds for every project. If in 25 or 26, some project is not spending everything and another needs a little bit more, you can move money around. The Treasury Department realized that they didn't want cities and towns to be
So the
leaving
rules,
money on the
just
table.
to be clear, the rules are that all the money has to be allocated
Yes.
by the end of this calendar year. If you've allocated and you're short in one account, but over in another, you can do some adjustment. And I don't even know the details of that, but
Yeah.
presumably that's the answer. But my concern, and we don't have to go into it further, is
Yeah.
what's gonna happen when the ARPA money runs out, which is gonna be soon.
Yeah,
And what's the plan for the 9.5 million or more
yeah.
to account for increases in?
It's a great question. Certainly, it was included in the override, the operating override that obviously the city didn't support, but we did try to add $1 million to the budget as we did in the 2013 override, to help make sure we can continue this program at a high level. So we'll continue to look at all funding sources going forward for funding it. It's incredibly important.
I'll finish. My concern here is that, we're not saying every single year, here's 9.5%, now we're gonna go to 9.5, now we're gonna go to 9.8, now we're gonna go to 10.2. Rather, we seem to be cobbling this together from a
We always
variety of
have,
sources.
yeah.
And I'll just leave it, that concerns me because this is probably the number one or number two complaint that we get on a regular basis.
Yeah,
So
us as well.
I-
We agree.
I'll leave it at that.
Yeah.
Thanks, appreciate it. Thank you,
Thank
Madam
you.
Chair.
Thank you. Counselor Kelly, you're next.
Thank you. I'm gonna now add myself into the previous crowd of paving geeks. One of the things I really like about being on this committee is hearing this report every year from Conrad. I didn't know I would be so interested in different paving materials and schedules and approaches, and I'm a convert, grant of locations don't really do it so much for me, but this gets me and I really appreciate it. And Conrad, I'm so glad you're back here again. I also want to give a quick shout out to Scott Matthews for stepping in for this committee tonight. Hey, Scott, thank you for being here. Not a committee that everyone thinks is fascinating, but I love seeing you there. He's our clerk on land use too. I understand why Councillor Kalis talked about paving in the way he did, because I think all of us might agree that that is one of the things we hear about the most from our residents, our neighbors, all the time. And I appreciated too, Conrad, you reinforcing the difference or the separation between minor and arterial and smaller versus major. I think that's a really important thing for people to understand. We hear about this all the time. We travel it all the time, whether we're walking or biking or driving. So this is why it's very important to us. And I do think that Newton has done an increasingly good job of this. So when you showed it was a chart on the maintenance overlay, kind of your 10-year program chart, and it listed streets alphabetically, it cut off what we could see. And unlike Councillor Kalis, I could see things really well on Zoom. Perhaps it sounds like better than those in the room. So getting back up will be helpful, but you cut off right before I wanted to know the lower half of the alphabet. So is there a way, this is perhaps a question really more for Jim or Shauna, can we get that? I've tried to find some of this. It used to be easier for me online. I've asked a separate question of Shauna now repeatedly about my street in terms of what potential utility and paving work might happen. How can we, as councilors, most easily find this information for our constituents who are asking, like, when's my street being done? What's being done? What are the dates of what's being done? How do we find that information easily?
So I can send you the list of what's being done. It's not going to have the dates because we can't exactly promise when we're going to get to it, but it is a time frame of a year. It may be this fall or next spring.
Yeah.
Well, Shauna, when I first wrote to you, it was after Jim's presentation during our budget thing, and he happened to mention my street, at which half the people who live on the street wrote to me and said, what's happening and when? And I haven't been able to give them an answer.
You'll see there's a request for $3.2 million for this work upcoming on Taft Ave is included in that request.
Yeah, I would just like the specifics of it to share. So, but it's a more general question, like, how do we find information like that?
So that was part of our CIP presentation.
Yeah.
We have not gone out to bid on that. So I cannot possibly give you a schedule right now. As soon as we go out to bid and we award the contractor will inform us of the schedule.
Okay, yeah, it's not just about this street, but I appreciate you mentioning Taft Ave. Shout out Taft Ave people. But again, I just want to end by really thanking Conrad and by thanking DPW for contracting with Conrad and saying this is one of the things that keeps me very engaged in public facilities work. So thank you all very much.
Thank you, Councilor Collier.
Councilor Getz?
I just have a few quick questions. I'm mostly interested in the slide deck and actually getting a glossary of terms, because there's quite a few pieces that, terms that are in here that I have no idea what they mean. So it would be really great. Does that even exist, in terms of like, the level of work that's being done on each of the roads? I don't know if there's another slide deck or video that I can be pointed to in order to be able to interpret quite a bit of this information. But that
Yeah, we'll be happy to put something together when we distribute this as well. It's
IP too has a nice sort of explanation of the different techniques. Shauna, that's still in there, correct?
It is, and I can send it out to the committee if you would like.
Get you a link to, what pages it's on, but it helps explain each of those techniques.
Yeah, and then the other question I have is regarding just even in terms of the PCI level, the rating, because it seemed as if, the benchmarks are the 72.17, and then it was, I don't know whether or not 100 is what is the ultimate goal, and whether or not 72 is, wherever the benchmark was that we were trying to reach. And then I was curious about like even the life cycle of a road, that you actually do the down to the core, and then you have to then go into a cycle of maintenance, and you're perpetually doing a maintenance, which I assume would be ultimately for the city a lot less dollars, but I don't know, I don't know.
Yeah, so Councilor Getz, I appreciate the questions. In terms of, I'm going to answer the overall PCI question first. So first of all, PCI stands for Pavement Condition Index.
Right.
It is an ASTM standard that you have to collect the information about the roadway in a certain manner and then be able to follow that ASTM standard to get the results. And just for your information, I've worked with over 100 communities throughout New England on these types of projects, and I get this question a lot in terms of what is a good PCI? What should we really be shooting for? And I say the same answer every time. It really depends on where you're starting, because I've worked with communities that have almost a 90 PCI, but they're in great condition and they've started in a good place and they've invested a ton of money and have a lot less miles of roadway to maintain too. So in terms of Newton, I would say overall, our goal now is to get that 72.19 or 17, I believe it was, up to a 74, and maybe even a 75 at some point. And you're right, the reason that there's the difference between, say, the arterials and collectors at a 78, almost a 79, and the local roadways at a 68 and the overall average is 72 is because of the volume of roadways that there are in that local category. So I believe there's, you know, I believe it's somewhere, I don't have it off the top of my head, but it's somewhere around like 170 of or 180 of the miles of roadway in the city are in that local category. So with those being so in that 68 on the average of those, it brings the weighting of the overall roadway network way down. So that gives you kind of an idea. I think shooting for an overall score of like an 82 on the arterials and collectors is a really good kind of goal moving forward. That's going to give you on average roadways that are in very good condition. They are, you know, when you drive down them, you're not going to notice many potholes or cracking, or even the rideability overall will be very good. So, and really that's where you kind of get, we call it like a complaint line of where you get to where you have to be above that and people don't really notice the roadways. And if you're below that, that's when you're getting all the calls. So the goal here is to try to keep people that are driving through the city using the roads that they get to and from destinations on in a condition where they're not even going to notice the roadways because they're in good condition. And then honestly, like, you know, as you get onto the local roadways, yes, you're going to have some roadways that are in rougher condition. They are not traveled as much, but it also, you know, it leads to lower speeds on those roadways as well. So our goal here is to get to every single roadway we can and get it in a good state of repair. But the reality is that it would take a even more substantial investment to be able to do that within, say, a 5-year period. So I think we're making great traction.
Yeah, so just to follow up, so in my thinking, you invest, and you get the road quality up to a level that in fact your maintenance will cycle in a way that you're stretching it out. So that then
Yes.
your investment pays back in the sense of the dollars that are required to maintain the quality of the road is like 8 to 10 years. You know, I just don't know what a life cycle of a road is, you know, if it's in fact optimized and then, you know, you retreat it, and what is that maintenance cycle?
Exactly. And I can kind of go through the whole thing. I'll just kind of go through it briefly so you understand it. But a typical roadway in New England with, you know, say it's had a mill and overlay done, it's got a new riding surface, and it's in good condition. You can expect that road, depending on the traffic volumes that are on it, to last somewhere in between 10 and 15 years if you do no maintenance to it at all. At the end of that 10 to 15 years, it's going to be, you know, it's going to be a potholed road. It's going to start showing signs of its age, things like that. If you perform that routine maintenance and preventative maintenance along the way, you know, for instance, if you see a roadway start cracking and you do crack seal to it, we say that the crack seal will extend the life of that roadway by 3 years. So instead of being 10 to 15 years, it's now going to be 13 to 18 years in terms of doing nothing else. But the goal here is, as you indicated, is to do the maintenance at the time that's needed. And it comes in cycles. So, you know, I look at it as like a curve. It goes, you know, up the curve when it's brand new. It comes down the curve. You do some maintenance, it goes back up, and then it goes back down again, depending on what you need to do. And, you know, there's theory out there that you could just do maintenance forever and keep that roadway in good condition. I don't necessarily believe in that in our climate. I think at some point at the 22, 23 year mark, if you do all the maintenance along the way, you really need to do a mill and overlay to kind of reset the surface of that roadway. But the other thing that doing the maintenance is allowing you to do is it's allowing you to keep the sub base, what the road is built on, in better condition. So you can do mill and overlay instead of rebuilding the roadway. And that's really where there's an added benefit there. Even if you have to reset the roadway surface at some point, you're not having to rebuild the roadway completely.
Yeah, and then just lastly, in terms of environmental impact, are there products and are there petroleum products that actually can be displaced, or, you know, because you talked about one process that seemed to be more environmentally friendly, and reuse of the road surface or the road materials sounded like a really great advent. Are there new things that we can do or consider? You know, are there things coming into the pipeline that actually would be more environmentally friendly?
There are, and you know, the city has been very open to trying those when they come to surface. I know that we did a product a couple years ago. It was a fog seal, and it was a completely green product. They say you could lick it and you'd be completely fine. Now, there are challenges with newer products as well. That one seemed to work out, and we're kind of monitoring what that looks like over time. And we want to see if we get the benefit out of using products like that. We started that way at the beginning of the process with the hot in place recycling. One of the Councilor Kalis, I believe, mentioned, you know, the burning of the trees. That didn't work out for that application. But we've used that application in other areas where there was no tree cover, and that's a little bit more sustainable as well because you're reusing some of the surface that's there. So again, this TPW overall has been very open to trying those products out. We usually do it on a pilot cases where we'll bid a smaller project, monitor their progress, and kind of see where it goes from there. But I attend a number of different association meetings all over the country, and I'm always looking out for those products, and specifically for Newton, because you've been open to trying those products and really looking for avenues where you can be better and greener and more sustainable.
Well, thank you. And I have, just even in the time span that I've been here, the roads have significantly improved, which is great. Yeah.
It's good to hear.
Okay, thanks.
I just have a few small questions. You know, you talked about putting in all of those, the panels that you put in to make it the sidewalks accessible. I forget what they're called.
The tactile warning panels?
Sorry, pardon me?
The tactile warning panels at the curb ramps?
So there's a feeder road to Lowell Avenue that has those wonderful panels, but the roadway puddles up after a rain, and the rain sits there and makes those panels unusable. You know, it sits there for maybe even up to a week, depending on what the weather's all about. So how do we get those things fixed?
Yeah, I know that's, oh, go ahead, Commissioner.
Thank you. Thank you, Counselor. Yes, usually in that case, we need to mill that area and change the grade. That's the challenge with putting the panels in, because in order to be ADA compliant, they can only have a certain slope. And sometimes when we don't build those originally, it does create that ponding. So we need to go in and mill and raise some of those areas, and we do those. So if you do see those, please let us know.
Okay.
We do go looking for them also, but there are some out there that we know, and we do need to do some work, or there's work planned there. But yes, please send those to us, because unfortunately putting these in after the fact is very difficult sometimes, and it will create that ponding in certain areas.
Should I put that into 311?
Sure, that's the best way to do it. Thank you.
Okay. At Mason Rice School, there's been a problem with the private road that goes down that hill. Is it Brace? I forget what it's called.
Shauna knows what it is.
Yeah.
I do.
Brace Bridge.
It's Brace Bridge, and it's been repaired.
Is it so that it doesn't puddle up anymore by the crosswalk?
I believe that's the case. Yes, our streets division was out there, I believe this past spring, and fixed it.
Out with my Ward 6 friends. How much money do we spend on maintenance?
It varies per year, depending on what the priorities are on the overall roadway program. I would say on average, we try to spend somewhere in between 750,000 and 150,000, 75,000 and 150,000 on routine maintenance. And then preventative maintenance is based on what types of treatments we're going to bid out that year, and getting an understanding of where those priorities are as the year goes on. So it varies. I think in some years we've spent upwards of $1.5 million on preventative and routine maintenance. And then there's been years that it's been a lot less, just based on what the priorities were.
So are we spending enough on maintenance to keep, you know, the longevity of the roads what we'd like to have?
I think right now we're doing a great job of keeping that balance. There are just some years that we don't have great candidates to do. For instance, on the routine maintenance, which is your crack sealing, there were years that we've done 225, 250,000, and we just didn't have any more candidates to spend the money on. And then, you know, you go through a winter cycle and more candidates pop up because they're deteriorating every year. So I think right now it's a good balance. And I think as we continue to kind of progress forward, we're going to spend more money on maintenance and probably a little bit less on the minor and the major rehab.
Okay. So one last question is, if, there are streets where there's only sidewalks on one side of the street, for example, on Beaumont. There's only a sidewalk on one side, so where does that fit into your assessment about the sidewalks? Do we have a plan to put in sidewalks, or do we just leave it alone and deal with the ones we've got?
No, that's a good point, Counselor. We do hear that, and we deal with that quite often. It really depends on the conditions, safe routes to schools, things of that nature. We try to install sidewalk. And then there are conditions, Chestnut Street's a good example where there's retaining walls. It would take major construction, things like ledge, very large trees that we don't want to remove, that impede that construction. So it's really on a case-by-case basis, but we are trying to make those connections where we can. But unfortunately, like our roads, the sidewalks, as you see, are, you know, we have a lot of work to do there with our current inventory. But we are adding where we deem necessary and it's beneficial.
Okay, good to know. Counselor Danberg, your hand is up. Do you have it up because it's left over, or do you have something else to say? I think Counselor Danberg isn't there. Okay, so is there anyone else that questions, comments?
Want to hold this or NAN?
Every year you come back and do this kind of a presentation, so should we NAN this one?
Well, if it's in the term, we could hold it and present it next year again.
Yeah, okay, all right, so let's do that.
I'll move to hold.
So Council President Laredo has moved to hold this item. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Okay, that's unanimous. Thank you, Conrad. That was a very good, very great presentation. I look forward to actually being able to see some of those maps. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you all, and you know, look forward to this every year, and look forward to continuing to make progress here on the Transportation Network Improvement Program.
Thank you. Okay, the next item is 243-24. Her Honor, the Mayor requesting authorization to appropriate and expend $3,200,000 and authorize a general obligation borrowing of an equal amount for the water main improvements in FY25, and authorization to apply any premium received upon the sale of the bonds or notes, less the cost of preparing, issuing, and marketing them, and any accrued interest received upon the delivery of the bonds or notes to the cost of the project, and to reduce the amount authorized to be borrowed for the project by like amount. Who is speaking on this one?
I will, Madam Chair. Thank you. Yes, this request is for $3.2 million to appropriate and expend. This is part of our CIP water work, our cleaning lining program for city water lines. This year, we expect to spend about $5.3 million on this. Each year, MWRA does offer us no interest loan, which we take advantage of. This year, that will be just under $2.1 million. So with this 3.2, that will allow us to do the work that we have that's in the CIP for our citywide water main repairs.
Okay, questions, comments? Council Gentile.
So Commissioner, you pretty much answered the question that I wanted to ask. I just wanted to know where we were with you know, loans, no interest loans from the state in addition to our own money, but are the out and out grants, are those no longer available?
The grants haven't been, Counselor. Great question. For a while there, it was as much as 75% grant, 25% loan. It now has gone back to just no interest loans, but there is talk, as you know, Lou Taverna is very involved with the MWRA on their board, and they are talking about bringing back the partial grant program. So hopefully we'll see that next year.
Okay, that's all I wanted to ask about.
Anybody else? No, do we have a motion?
I'll move it.
Council Gentiles moved approval. So any other discussion? Okay, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? Right. That one is approved also unanimously. The last item is 235-24. Her Honor the Mayor requesting authorization to appropriate and expend the sum of $2,800,000, $800,274.38. Oh, without that 38 cents, where would we be? From the June 30th, 2023 certified free cash to account. And this gives the accelerated roads program paving supplies to support the city's transportation network improvement program.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yes, this request is for just under $2.9 million, as you stated, from certified free cash. This would be for the FY25 roads program, which we just discussed. This would bring us up to about $7.3 million for the FY25 roads program, which we plan on spending at least 9.5 million. A lot of what we just discussed, getting this money earlier will allow us to put contracts out and get better pricing before we go into the new year. And then we will have these contractors if a lot of this new work could start in the fall. And if not, we'll be first early spring and we'll have this year's pricing. So it's beneficial to us. We will be putting all of our contracts back out to bid. We were fortunate that our major contractors this year extended their contracts with us, but they did let us know they will not do it again next year. So that's why we're trying to get this funding as soon as possible to get this work out to bid.
So this brings us to 7.5 out of the 9.5. Is that what you said?
7.3, Shauna. Shauna has the numbers. Yes, she's saying yes. 7.3.
So where's the rest of the 9.5? Where does that come from?
That will usually come from free cash or things of that nature that you have approved so far.
Next year?
Yeah.
Also chapter 90 is 2.3 million and the 2010 override is 1.2 million now, I believe.
This really puts us ahead of the game from where we've been in other years, so we're really using the remainder of free cash from last year, to put towards the roads program. So this puts us in very good shape hopefully within easy striking distance. We expect a decent free cash year again this fall, with the higher interest rates continuing. So we know we have a lot of needs, other needs as well, but certainly making sure the roads program is properly funded is high on our priority list. So we feel like we're, Sean and Jim, we're in good shape with this money to make it for a strong program this year.
Council Gentile?
So with all due respect first to the COO, I would describe next year's free cash position as being a little better than decent. I'd say that once again, we're gonna have a great amount of free cash. So that's the first thing. But secondly, I was hoping we got the letter from the mayor. Maybe I missed something. I didn't see any additional backup of what this actually means as far as roads, but am I to understand that in the earlier presentation, where there were specific roads that were identified, that this money is going to help to get those roads done this next year, or are there additional roads that this money will help to get whatever work is required?
Yeah, so the presentation was for 2024. So this will be for our 2025 upcoming roads. The roads we have listed in the CIP, we have the 5-year program in the CIP listed. So we'll go towards those, and then our maintenance work like we discussed, and some of the smaller roads also.
So for finance, do you think that we'd be able to get a little bit more detail as to, you know, what 2025 is going to look like as far as the roads, or are you still working on that?
Well, we're still working because we actually work with the utilities to coordinate that, but there's usually only a few roads. So there might be some minor changes, but we can get you more detail on what we have planned. And again, this happens every year. We may have to push a road out a year or two and bring another one in that we weren't going to do for a year or two. And that's only because of planned or unplanned utility work. If there was an emergency and then they realize they want to change the mains, whether it be water, sewer, or gas.
All right, because I think, you know, in past years, I know a number of colleagues have been very much interested in which specific roads are going to be getting done next fiscal year. So if we could get a little bit more detail, and I heard what you said about working with the utilities and so forth, but if we could get some of that information, I think it would be helpful.
Sure, Counselor, we'll supply that planned work.
All right, thanks.
President Laredo?
Mr. Yo, will this be the end of the 2023 free cash, this last allocation?
Yes, it will.
Was there a reason why at least some of this wasn't allocated 2 or 3 months ago, so Mr. McGonigal could have?
Well, this is,
contracting?
well, no, we're allocating this ahead of time so that he's ahead of the curve in terms of next year funding. So
we're gonna spend this year, I just want to be clear, we're spending this year's money being bound by that so we can do work next year.
right, so that we can set up contracts for this coming year, 25.
We're doing it so that.
Is there any reason we couldn't have gone out even earlier this year, say in February or March, to try to get work done in August and September?
Well, this is money, it wouldn't have mattered. This is money that we can still contract to get work done during 25. So a lot of this work will be done in, spring of 25, towards into calendar year 25. So
I guess, Commissioner, what's the lead time between when you get money and when you can get work started in the ground?
Right. Thank you, Counselor. Yeah, it's 3 to 4 months to execute a contract from the time we bid it to the time we have a final signed contract. But one thing to keep in mind is that right now, because there's actually a small pool, we'll probably have 4 or 5 bidders. There's not a huge bidding pool for this amount of work that we do. So just be mindful, we already have 2 of those contractors in the city working off the last contract, and they'll complete that work hopefully before the end of the year, or that rolls into the spring. But if they're done, again, then we could have another contractor, or most likely it's going to be one of those at least that will be awarded this contract. We've had the same couple contractors now working in the city because they're comfortable here and they know we pay our bills, and it's once you're coordinated with the police details and things of that nature, it becomes much more efficient to work in the same neighborhood. So we're probably going to see these same contractors, maybe one new one.
That's helpful. And are there just a limited number of contractors out there that are capable of doing the work?
Yeah, and because it's you're really hauling materials, so they really need to be localized to be efficient. As we all know, it's very difficult to get around. So if you're a contractor coming from another county, it's really not efficient to do this type of work outside of your area.
All right, thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Young. It's helpful.
Okay, anybody else have questions, comments? All right, do we have a motion on this one? So President Laredo has moved approval. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstentions? So it's unanimous. And please, everyone, don't forget to get your questions about gas leaks in to Cassidy by I think it's next Wednesday. All
Thank
done.
you all very much, Madam Chair, Councilors.
Thank you, Shauna. Thanks, both of you. Thank you, Mr. Yo.
Where you